Right, so in Emis Web or an alternative clinical system, obviously if we've got any System 1 or Vision practices on the call, I can't actually show you that, but we do have some screenshots and some guidance that we can send in the slide deck afterwards. Okay, so in here, I'm going to click on my Emis globe and I'm going to go to Workflow and Workflow Manager. And in Workflow Manager, down the left-hand panel, I'm looking in Document Management. So when Zoe contacts you and sends you guidance on how to basically get you up and running with Online Consult, one of the things we would ask you to do is to come into here and into configuration, into your settings, and just switch on the online triage functionality. So there's a little checkbox. We send you some guidance. I think you've got about 3 or 4 clicks in order to receive the forms from patient access directly into the system. Okay, so we ask you to do 2 things. One's to put the banner on the website, and the other one is basically to tick this box that I was just talking about in your settings to support the forms arriving from patient access. So what have we got in here? So in document management, we've got potentially 2, possibly 3 places it could arrive. So online triage folder is where any forms submitted through patient access will automatically arrive, and you can see them all teeing up in here. If the forms come through the website route, it will go into unmatched first, purely because it just needs you to check and verify that they are who they say they are and that they are a registered patient. Okay, when you've got an item in here, I believe on your ribbon up here, you will have an option to click to find the patient so that you can do your regular due diligence checks, you know, checking against name, date of birth, address, that they are who they say they are. And once you've matched them, they can then be filed in the same way that these ones can. Okay, so what have we got here? So the forms come in date and time order. We've got quite a few in there now. This inbox can be accessed by any of your staff members, assuming that you've given them permissions. So again, in your configuration settings, I believe you may want to consider perhaps giving a global view access into this account so that all your staff can access it, or you may indeed just control it in whatever way you wish in terms of who should and shouldn't be able to access the incoming forms. All being well, you use this already. This is where your test results come in, this is where your 111 forms come into, so we're not trying to introduce a new module in Emis Web. Hopefully this is familiar to you and you're familiar with how you action things in here, and that should make the process simpler for you. The bit that you guys need to think about really is who will be monitoring this and when, and what should they be doing with the incoming forms. So it goes back to that triage model, doesn't it, that we looked at earlier. You know, it could be a team of admin staff that you've got monitoring this every day, and they're processing them. So let's have a look at one of them and let's see what we can do with it. So this form here came in on the 1st of May at 20 to 2. It's from our lovely test patient flow. It tells you her age, it tells you the form. On the blue bar, it also tells us who her usual GP is, so it gives us an idea of who she regularly sees. At the bottom of the screen, and obviously you can adjust the size of these, under the details tab, it's giving you a preview, so contact your doctor about your headache. And if we click on the document tab, we can also see a preview of the incoming PDF down here as well. So at this point, it's a case of whoever's looking at this, having a look at it. You can double click on the incoming entry. Again, I'm sure you're all familiar with this to see the form in more detail. And of course, you've got your annotation tools on here. You've got a way of allocating this to someone and coding it, etc. So I'll just close that down. So there's different ways for you to use the functionality in Emis Web to review the incoming details. And then it might be a case of either adding a task. So you might be popping a patient note on there. You might be allocating that to a clinician, let's say, and some notes, and clicking send, and that will link a task to that incoming form, and it will pop that task in that colleague's inbox. You might then right click on this one and complete it, so it clears it out from the incoming mailbox and puts it into your completed folder, because you don't want your colleagues duplicating effort and reprocessing the same form. So this is the point really where we can't impose on you or stipulate how you would use a system to disseminate the work. Yeah, so it's thinking about Are we adding a task, or are we blocking time in people's diet? If you wanted clinicians, potentially, I don't know, lower grade clinicians in the practice to sit and work through these, it may well be that as they click on them, they can book in an appointment or issue a prescription. Yeah, so depending on what it is and who it's for, will determine what the next steps are. So you may not always be adding a task. Yeah, you might be referring it on to someone else. You might be just picking up the phone and contacting the patient, dealing with it and adding a consultation and remote closing it. Yeah, so lots of different outcomes, and that's the bit that we need you all to start thinking about, really. I think that's the biggest change for you and your processes. So I hope that's given you an insight into that. You will now understand where the forms arrive. They could come into unmatched if they're through the website, and you would match them before you can process them. I believe the Emis web system, depending on your settings, may try to match. So I think it's clever enough to use the data that they've provided to try and match them to the correct patient. And as I said, alternatively, any coming from patient access, where it knows who the patient is, will come into the online triage folder. I think that's covered everything for there. That's the forms arriving in your clinical system and processing them.